All right, we're on question 103, and the topic is innovations. So, what if the Wahhabi says that what, he says, what you think are innovations done by some Sahaba, done by Abu Bakr, compilation of Mus'haf, done by Umar, uh, making some adjustments to Taraweeh prayer, or some other things Umar did, or done by Uthman, like an additional call on Friday. They say, what if they say all of these, they're not bid'ahs, those are sunnahs, because they came from whom? From the Guided Caliphs. So they're not innovations. This is a question that gets some of the Muslims sometimes, but it shouldn't. So, one thing, like we said last time, catch him right here. The mere fact that he raises up the fact of these ones being companions means that this is an innovation. What's the significance of him saying these are Sahaba? Or if he says these are the Guided Caliphs, what's the significance of that? The real significance of that is that it's an innovation in the first place. Because the religion comes from whom? Yani, what's the source? What's the evidence? Is what Abu Bakr says or does in evidence, or is from the Quran and from the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? It's from the Quran and from the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's the evidence in the religion. Does Abu Bakr have a rule different from us in terms of following the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? No, he doesn't. That's not what Ahlul Sunnah believes, at least. Maybe for a deviant person who has wrong beliefs, he might believe that Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman and Ali have special permission to not obey the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that this special permission of not obeying the Prophet is permissible. That's basically what Wahhabi's belief here is. So he's going to say, no, where are you getting all this from? You're going off on a tangent and you're desperate. Don't you know that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to follow my sunnah and the sunnah of my guided caliphs? So these are the guided caliphs. We follow their sunnah like we follow the Prophet's sunnah. That's why we're saying these are sunnahs of those caliphs. The Prophet told about the sunnahs of the caliphs. Those are not innovations. You can't fall for that because he's backtracking on his definition or belief about innovations in the first place. Yani, put it this way, he wouldn't be even trying to explain this hadith like this if you don't bring to him the fact that some Sahaba did what he would call an innovation that he's forbidding. His default case is to tell you that anything new in religion is haram. وَكُلُّ مُحْدَثَةٍ بِدْعَةٍ. Every newly invented thing is an innovation. وَكُلُّ بِدْعَةٍ ضَلَالَةٍ. And every innovation is misguidance. وَكُلُّ ضَلَالَةٍ فِي النَّارِ. And every misguidance is in hell. So when he starts here with you, he's not saying really, except some things that the Sahaba did that's not included. And he's only going to resort to that when you challenge him to say to him, if your interpretation of this hadith is correct, and if your understanding of this topic is correct, then how would you explain what these Sahaba did? So he'll say, oh, those were sunnats, not bid'ats. And you say, how is that a sunnah? Did the Prophet do it? They say, no, it's not. The Prophet didn't do it, but it's not a bid'ah because he said, follow the sunnah of his companions, of his guided caliphs. So that's one thing. That the only reason they're even saying something here about them being caliphs or had it been another companion, about him being a companion, because if it was a companion who wasn't a caliph, he'll say, well, he was a companion. So it doesn't matter about being caliphs. Because what about what Khubayb did when he prayed 2 rak'ahs before being executed? The Wahhabis are going to say, that's not bid'ah. You can pray 2 rak'ahs. There's no bid'ah there. But Abu Hurairah said, he made a sunnah for us. What's he going to say? He's going to say, probably, still not a bid'ah though. Which means he's just going to ignore Abu Hurairah's statement. He's just going to ignore Abu Hurairah's statement. When Abu Hurairah said, he made a sunnah for us, he didn't say, he revived the sunnah of the Prophet for us. He said, the first one to make a sunnah of that was him. He wasn't a guided caliph. He wasn't a caliph. So why it was okay? He'll say he was a sahabi. So it doesn't, you don't have to be a caliph then to do it. Just enough to be a sahabi. What do you call it though? You can't call it a sunnah. Maybe he will. He say it's a sunnah. It's a sunnah of the sahabi. So where'd you get that from? Let's see what he says to that. But back to this one though. When you tell him what was done by Abu Bakr, like compilation of the Mus'haf that Omar talked him into because the Messenger of Allah didn't do it. He wasn't at first comfortable with doing it. But then he did it. And Omar setting some standards for Ramadan night prayers that the Prophet didn't set. And Uthman making a third call on Friday, which is actually the first adhan of Friday. Meaning, what he did was he had someone go to the market and call the adhan after the time came in so that they get ready. And then, so that was the innovated adhan there. And then the original adhan was the one that was called when the imam would take the pulpit. So that's the original one. So the original one is the second adhan when the imam goes up. And then you have the iqamah. So that's 3 calls on Friday. He innovated the third call of Friday, Uthman. So what's Wahhabi going to say? He's going to say, this is not bid'ah, this is sunnah. Sunnah of the Caliph. Don't you know that the Prophet ﷺ said, follow my sunnah and the sunnah of my guided caliphs? So say to him, well, let's see what we have. Because I have some scattered answers in my mind. Let's see how I have it arranged here. So here's the hadith. فَعَلَيْكُمْ بِسُنَّتِي وَسُنَّةِ الْخُلَفَاءِ الرَّاشِدِينَ. Adhere to my sunnah and the sunnah of the guided caliphs. They say that whatever those imams have contributed has been deemed the sunnah by the Prophet ﷺ. So it cannot be an innovation. Okay, so that you understand, the argument is based on their comprehension of the hadith. So here's the hadith. Adhere to my sunnah and the sunnah of the guided caliphs. So they say, here the Prophet ﷺ, he called their contributions a sunnah. So it's not bid'ah, it's sunnah. And they would say, because bid'ah is opposite of sunnah, so we can't call it a bid'ah, we have to call it a sunnah. So then that's when you bring him the hadith of Umar. Tell him, okay, so how come then you didn't say that for the hadith of Umar? Didn't Umar say, ni'mal bid'ah, what a good bid'ah? And you said means sunnah, revival of the sunnah. Yani, why did you say that it means what a good revival of the sunnah this is? You're saying we can't call it those caliphs did a bid'ah because it was sunnah. The Prophet called it a sunnah, so we can't call it a bid'ah because those words are opposites. So then, how did you explain the hadith of Umar? Ni'matil bid'atu hadi. What a good bid'ah this is. Didn't you say that means what a good revival of the sunnah this is? So how do you put these two together? Maybe he will try to put those two together. So what you're going to do, maybe you're going to be patient with him while he tries to talk you in circles. Or what? Maybe you'll cut the conversation because you're not getting anywhere. Maybe you'll try to convince him. And another question you can say to him, and if you want, you can start with this one. This first one, what we said about bringing Omar's statement, that's not as immediate as the second one here, actually. That's like sticking it to him. Bringing him the statement of Omar is like sticking it to him once he made this ridiculous claim. But if we want to get more to the point, then we can ask him this question. When he says, you can't say that's bid'ah, that's a sunnah, because they were caliphs, guided caliphs. So you say to him, well, is it permissible for someone to do what the Prophet didn't do? That's a yes or no question. What do you think he's going to do with that question? You think Wahhabi's going to answer this question? I don't think so. Is it permissible for someone to do what the Prophet didn't do? Ordinarily, he would answer the question, though. If you asked him, is it permissible to do what the Prophet didn't do? Alayhi salatu wasalam. He'll say, no, this is bid'ah. You can't do bid'ah. It's haram. Wa kullu bid'atin dalala. But if you bring this very same question, but after this case, when you challenge him, tell him, look what these Sahaba innovated. Then he says, those are not innovations, those are sunnahs because they were guided caliphs. And you say, well, let me ask you, is it permissible to do something that the Prophet didn't do? This question that he ordinarily would answer here, he probably won't answer it here. Or he will, meaning, and I say won't answer means he won't give you actually the answer, which is yes or no. He'll say something though, because he doesn't want to stop talking. And he doesn't want to appear defeated. But imagine if he was just objective and he's talking to you and he's really willing to hear somebody else's point of view and understand what's being said to him. And let's say he has this mistake here. And then you told him, what about all what these Sahaba did? And then he says, but they were guided caliphs, but he has open mind. And then you said to him, well, let me ask you, is it permissible to do something the Prophet didn't do? Then if he has open mind, he asked him here this question, then this is where he'd say, oh, that's a pretty good question there. And then maybe he'll think here. But if he's a standard Wahhabi, he's not even going to stop to think here. He's just not going to say the answer that makes him lose. So he's going to keep talking without stopping to think. Or if he can't think of an answer, then he will stop. And then he's not going to want to talk to you anymore. Because Wahhabis are too stubborn to accept the truth. So he will just stop and then he said, all right, that's it. We're done here. So here's the question, Wahhabi. Is it permissible to do something that the Prophet didn't do in religion? Alayhi salatu wassalam. Add in religion there. So he doesn't say, well, you can do cars and phones and stuff. We're not talking about that. Although you could, but don't go there. That's too easy for him to try to slide out. Just in religion, is it permissible to do what the Prophet didn't do, alayhi salatu wassalam? But here, after this point, you ask him this question. This requires only a yes or no. So if he says no, then how would what the guided caliphs introduced be sunnah? And if he says yes, then he validates good innovations. So I hope that's clear. So that one, if you needed to, take notes on that one, because that's one of the ones that Wahhabi will slow you down with. Saying, La, look, it says in the hadith, the sunnah of my caliphs, the guided caliphs. It's a sunnah, it's not a bid'ah. So if he said to me, no, that's sunnah, it's not a bid'ah, I would say to him, bid'ah can't be sunnah? He'll say, no way, a'udhu billah, bid'ah can't be sunnah. You tell him, so what did you say was the meaning of Umar's statement? Ni'mati bid'atu hadi? And then what he's going to do, you know what he's going to do. Instead of giving up and instead of accepting and being honest and wanting really correct religion, he's going to continue with his rotten behavior, most likely. Okay, so that's that. But there's still something else about this issue of the sunnahs of the guided caliphs, which is his way of explaining this hadith makes the caliphs impeccable. He makes the caliphs as impeccable as the Prophet himself, alayhi salatu wassalam. So if he were to say, La, that's not bid'ah, that's sunnah. Don't you know that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said Follow my sunnah and the sunnah of the guided caliphs. So if you said to him, so you make the guided caliphs as impeccable as the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You say, no, where did you get that from? Because he didn't really think about his answer. If he thought about his answer, he wouldn't be surprised by this. Where'd you get that from? How do you think that I'm making them as impeccable as the Prophet? The Prophet is the one who said, alayhi salatu wasalam, to take my sunnah and the sunnah of the guided caliphs. So that's what the Prophet said. Tell him, but your understanding of this, though, is that they are as impeccable as the Prophet. And you say, no, I don't. How did you get there? Tell him, because is it possible that they could make a mistake? So he should say, yes, it is. Tell him, okay, so then if it's possible they could make a mistake, if they did, should you follow them in that mistake? Then he should say, no, you shouldn't. So say, okay. So if it's possible that they could make a mistake, and then you wouldn't follow them in that mistake, and then the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, according to you, every innovation is bad. And then when they innovated something, you said it's good. You said it's a sunnah, actually. When they innovated something, it's a sunnah. And then you told me you can't call it a bid'ah because those were the guided caliphs. It's a sunnah. But then I asked you, well, isn't it possible they could make a mistake? And you said yes. So, and I asked you, would you follow them in a mistake if they made one? And you said no. So, and then, but when I told you, okay, but look, they innovated something and you claimed that every innovation is bad, you said, this is impossible to be an innovation. How is it possible to be an innovation if it's possible that they could make mistakes? If it is possible that they could make mistakes, that means possible that they could do an innovation according to you, because an innovation is a mistake, according to you. And if it's not possible that they could make a mistake, that means you're deeming them impeccable. So which one? They could possibly make a mistake, and therefore they're not impeccable, and you should only follow their sunnah when it complies with the Prophet's sunnah, or they could never make a mistake. So say, la, they could make a mistake, it's possible. And you should only follow their sunnah when it complies with the Prophet's sunnah. So then we say, okay, according to you then. The Prophet said, وَكُلُّ بِدْعَةٍ ضَلَالَةٍ. Every innovation is misguidance. And then some people who are susceptible to mistake came, and then they did what the Prophet called a misguidance, according to you. So is it a bid'ah or is not a bid'ah? So he's stuck here. But if you found yourself making this argument with the Wahhabi, you're probably going to have to keep him in the corner. He's going to try to get out of there. He's going to see where you're going with that probably and try to get out of there. So don't let him get out of there. Yani, this argument is a formula. You already have the formula. So once you get him there, you say, oh, this one, oh, I got to move for that one. Like, you ever practice some martial arts, for example? So there's moves, aren't there? They require combinations, right? Yeah, that's what this is, a combo. This argument here is a combo. So when you got him in the right position, then you hit him with your combo. That means needs 2, 3, 4 sentences, some setup, something like this. Then once you got him, then bang, 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 bang. So while you're trying to set your combo up there, he's going to try to get out of there. Let's go back to the questions now. Question 104. What if he says that the dotting in the Quran is not an innovation? It is merely a writing convention. If he said that to me, I'd say to him, Ibn Taymiyyah said it's an innovation. Then what's he going to say? He's going to say, Ibn Taymiyyah could be wrong. That's how rotten Wahhabis are. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Let's see Ibn Taymiyyah's quote. Ibn Taymiyyah said in Majmu' al-Fatawa, وَقِيلَ يُكْرَهُ ذَلِكَ لِأَنَّهُ بِدْعَةٌ. It was said about the dots to be disliked because it is an innovation. وَقِيلَ لَا يُكْرَهُ لِلْحَاجَةِ إِلَيْهِ. And it was said that it's not disliked because of the need. Yani, we just put disliked there. We could put the word avoided if we want. It was said to be avoided because it's an innovation, the dots. And it was said to not be avoided because of the need of it. وَقِيلَ يُكْرَهُ النُّقَطُ دُونَ الشَّكْلِ. And it was said that the dots should be avoided, but not the vowel slashes, because they clarify the syntactical case. And then what did he say? وَالصَّحِيحُ أَنَّهُ لَا بَأْسَ بِهِ. What's correct is that there's nothing wrong with it. It's fine. So even here, because he doesn't want to appear wrong, he's going to say, oh, even if Ibn Taymiyyah was mistaken, we're not going to take it. He wasn't mistaken here. When he was finally right, then you deemed him wrong. SubhanAllah. Question 105. What if he says the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam loved him more than others? So had the Mawlid been good, they would have been the first to do it. That's a common one that the Wahhabis say, and that's really weak. Don't let a Wahhabi get this one past you. And don't sweat from this question. Say to him, it's not everything that's good the Sahaba thought of it before anyone else. So that's basically what you're saying. You're saying, had the Mawlid been good, the Sahaba would have been the first to do it. So just take the word Mawlid out and put anything else there. If you can't be consistent there, then that means that your argument is garbage. Had the dotting of the Quran been good, then the companions would have been the first to do it. Did you put it there? No. And then that means it's not a valid argument. Question 106. What if he says that the Mawlid is like Christmas? And that the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, do not exaggerate in my praise as the Christians have done to Jesus, the son of Mary. If he said to me, Mawlid is like Christmas, I'd say, no, it's not. It would say, yeah, well, the Christians, they celebrate Jesus' birthday. I would say, acknowledging Jesus' birthday by itself is not the bad thing anyway. So maybe he would say, so anyway, yeah, that means it's like Christmas. Then I'll say, no, it's not. So if he wants to say, yes, it is, I'll say, no, it's not. If he wants to say, yes, it is, I'll say, no, it's not. But if he says, well, why not? Then I'd say, because the Christians worship Jesus and they incorporate shirk into their practice. The Mawlid is not like that. The Mawlid, we don't worship Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. In Mawlid, what do? We pray in Jama'ah together. We do some lessons. We sing some praises of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. We read his biography. We do games for the kids. That's not like Christmas. That's like Eid, for example. It's not like Christmas. So you might say, well, there is no other Eid. Say to him, there's two Eids. Yes. I didn't say it is Eid. I said it's like Eid. It's not like Christmas. It's like Eid. So then he might repeat, well, it's like Eid, but there's only two Eids. So it's haram. You can't do it. So I would say to him, that's not true. Yani, you can do good things. The good things you do on Eid, you can do them on another day too. You're just a stone-hearted Wahhabi who hates nice things. You can do good things that you do on Eid on another day too. Really, on any day, you can bring the Muslims together. You can say, oh, Muslims, come to my house. And we're going to read the Prophet's biography, and I'm going to feed you dinner, and we'll pray in Jama'ah together. And we can sing some Madih, and I have some gifts for you too. And then you can be on your way. That's not haram. You can do that on Eid. You can do that on any day. It's just a stone-hearted Wahhabi with dark rings around his eyes, an ugly face, who doesn't like those nice things. They're just mean people. That's it. Standing around with their arms crossed and their faces frowning. It's like the edges of their lips are drooping below their chins. That's how hard their frowns are. No problem here. It's not like Christmas, and it's no problem with it being like Eid. No problem. And this hadith doesn't apply here. Do not exaggerate in my praise as the Christians have done to Jesus, son of Mary, because we're not exaggerating in the Prophet's praise. If we got together and we read his biography and we made dhikr together in a dhikr circle, sallallahu ala Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, for example, and we did all those nice things, there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. That shows you that how much Wahhabis don't like the nice things for the Muslims. We're very mean, dry people. They're looking for something to make it haram and to stop you from doing it, always. He said, ماذا إن قال لك النبي مات يوم مولده وإن أول من احتفل بمولده هم الشيعة. So what if they said the Prophet died the day he was born, and that the first to celebrate the Prophet's Mawlid were the Shiites? So that's two questions there. If he says the Prophet died on the day he was born, I would say to him, we celebrate for his birth. We celebrate for his birth. No problem here. If he died on the day he was born, if his death date is the same as his birth date, that doesn't mean now Mawlid became haram and exaggeration and meaningless and should be avoided altogether. So I'd say to him, doesn't even matter. Doesn't matter. That's meaningless. There's no point here. He says, what you're celebrating is death. So no, you're not. If he says, but it was the same day, I'll say, even if it was, doesn't mean you're celebrating his death. So if he says, well, what's the difference? I'll say, it's the intention. Moron. It's the intention. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. And if he were to say the Shiites were the first to practice Mawlid, I'll say that's a lie, because King Muzaffar was. Bring me your documentation. And let's see what he has. Don't be afraid to tell him to show you his documents. A lot of times you're going to be afraid to ask him for his reference because he's going to give you something, maybe. You're afraid he'll give you something. Okay, let me see what you have. I mean, wa iyyakum. It's like, brothers and sisters, when I said right here, what made the difference is the intention. It's like how they make a difference, the scholars made the difference between a charity and a gift. Is there a difference? Yani, isn't the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam allowed to take a gift and it's haram for him to take charity? Yes. So you might scratch your head there. How's that? He's allowed to take a gift and it's haram for him to take charity? How's that? The answer is that what makes the gift different from the charity is not the giving, it's the intention. So even if it looked the same, but when the intention was different, then it was different. It was something else. Even if it was the same day, that's not the intention, though, to celebrate his death. And yani, subhanallah wa bihamdi. The Muslims mourn over the Prophet's death, alayhi salatu wassalam. Because by that same argument, if we shouldn't be happy for the Prophet's birth because that was the same date as his death, then it should mean we shouldn't be sad for his death because that was the same date as his birth. Wahhabis, la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Anything they can do here in all these cases. And to claim that the Shiites were the first to, it sounds like they're calling King Muzaffar a Shiite. If he were to say that, then that's really what he's getting at. It's like he's insulting King Muzaffar. If he says the Shiites were the first to celebrate the Prophet's birth. So I might say to him, you fear Allah, don't call King Muzaffar Shiite. You don't know that probably to Allah he's better than you are. That's what appears to be the case, too. Now, question 107. What if he says, it is not permissible to gather reciting the prophetic biography and singing words of praise and feeding the Muslims and other worships on one day in the name of commemorating the Prophet's birth? So if he said that to me, I'd say to him, according to your stone heart, there's other answers too, but I'd say to him, that's according to your stone heart. So I don't know what he's going to say. He might say, la, because bid'ah. Say all those things that you even named are not bid'ah by themselves. Reciting the Quran, you just put a limit on reciting the Quran. And singing words of praise and feeding Muslims, you just put a limit on all of that because you invite us to be dry like you, dry and lifeless like you. But perhaps he'll say, but the Prophet didn't gather all those things like that in one package with this name like you do. So it's bid'ah. Although he didn't accept that to call what Umar did a bid'ah. When Umar packaged something not like the Prophet did, although has some semblance, they refused to call it what it was. They refused to call it what Umar called it himself. But here they're going to say, you can't package all those together like that and then do it this way as one thing. Then I'd say to him, then according to you, three aspects of Tawheed is invalid. So if he says, how so? Yani. Now, if he's a Wahhabi who has a bit of sense, he'll know why. Because he's just going to see how I'm taking his argument and applying it to his own conviction. And if he knows where he gets his three types of Tawheed from, according to him, then he'll understand the meaning of the argument. But if he's a moron and he doesn't put things together well, like many Wahhabis, then he'll say, why? Tell him, because. Where'd you get it from? Where'd you get this Tawheed of Uluhiyya, Tawheed of Rububiyyah, Tawheed of Asma wa Sifat? Where'd you get those from? Do you have a hadith that puts all of those together? No. Do you have an ayah? No. So how you put all those together is going to say, well, we found different ayahs and they mean that. We put them all together and it was easier like that. So you can do it though. It's the point. As they say, rules for thee, not for me. You can gather from here and there and package something and give it a name and push it and say there's nothing wrong with it. But somebody else does like that, then it's haram bid'ah. Maybe he's a kafir. Question 108. What if the Wahhabi says that there is no rahbaniyah in the nation of Muhammad? Yani, if he says there is no monasticism, we, the followers of Muhammad, we don't practice being monks. Why would he say that? That's because of giving him evidence for good innovations from the Quran. وَرَهْبَانِيَّةً ابْتَدَعُوهَا, and a monasticism the followers of Jesus innovated. مَا كَتَبْنَاهَا عَلَيْهِمْ, we didn't ordain it on them. They made it themselves. إِلَّا ابْتِغَاءَ رِضْوَانِ اللَّهِ, they only did it for seeking Allah's acceptance. So it's good innovation. They might say, but that was for the nation of Jesus. There's no rahbaniyah in this nation of Muhammad. The answer would be, it's not the point whether there's a rahbaniyah or not. So that's famous Wahhabi trick right there. Which is, so is it the issue of being rahbaniyah or is the issue of innovation there? It's like he's saying, what's our point? Our point is to say they did a good innovation, which was the rahbaniyah. So how's Wahhabi do? It will say, but it's not permissible to do rahbaniyah. So if you're not aware of how to deal with Wahhabi, that's how he's going to take you right off your argument. It's not about the rahbaniyah, it's about the good innovation, whatever it was. So practice staying focused, brothers and sisters, and I remind myself, I always practice staying focused. In our lessons, I'm always telling you, stay focused, don't let someone take you off, etc., etc. Repeat yourself. If you ask him and then he tries to get away, repeat your question. Stay focused, stay focused, stay focused. I still always, as much as I tell you to stay focused, I try myself to stay focused. It's not like I'm not, yani, if I'm able to focus, it's because of practice, not just because I'm just a naturally focused guy. Sheikh Abdullah taught us how to be like this. This is from the Sheikh, rahimahullah. So that's what you tell him. When he says, well, there's no rahbaniyah in the nation of Muhammad, tell him it's not the point. He did a good innovation. And question 109, is there another refutation of the innovated three aspects of Tawheed? Yes. Why, actually there is, which is that to say, how did they divide Tawheed Uluhiyya and Tawheed Rububiyyah in the first place when they mean the same thing? They are the same thing. Uluhiyya is Rububiyyah. Rububiyyah is Uluhiyya. Uluhiyya means godhood. Rububiyyah means lordship. They are the same. What's the proof they are the same? Proof is that you can say, La ilaha illallah. No one is ilah but Allah to become a Muslim. And you don't have to go back and say, Wala Rabba, and there's no Rabb but Allah. So when you said Ilah, that was good enough. And had you said Rabb, it would have been good enough. You could have said, La Rabba illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah. There's no Rabb but Allah, and Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. That's valid. You wouldn't have to go back and say, Wala ilah. So that proves that the Rabb and the Ilah are the same. And when the angels question you in the grave and they say, Mar Rabbuk, who's your Lord? They don't go back and say, and by the way, Man Ilahuk, who's your God? Because when you said, who's your Lord, you said, who's your God? In the hadith of the slave girl, the very hadith of the slave girl, in one version, the Prophet ﷺ said to her, Atashhadina Allah ilaha illallah. Do you testify that there's no ilah but Allah? She said, yes. And in another version of the hadith of the slave girl, he said to her, Mar Rabbuk, who's your Rabb? She said, Allah. So how did you split them into two? It's because you're an innovator. You are the innovator, Wahhabi. Yeah, it sounds like Trinity. Yes, it does. Wallahu a'lam. Let's stop there.